Hello and welcome to Long Live Hooky Street, a brand new podcast where we will rewatch and discuss every episode of Britain's most beloved TV comedy, Only Fools and Horses. I'm Jenny and I'm joined from Hong Kong by my co-host and sister Heather. Say hello, dude.
Hello, listeners. This episode is an introduction to us and the podcast. So we will be telling you a little bit about ourselves and what we plan to do over the next 64 weeks. Oh my God. If you were just looking to dive straight into the episodes, then you can skip this one because this is just an introduction. So just a little bit about Jenny and I. So we are two sisters that grew up in the West Midlands in England in the mid-80s. But we now live on opposite sides of the world. So I'm in Hong Kong and Jenny is in America. And we only usually get to see each other every few years. And we were raised on Only Fools and Horses. And the idea for this podcast really came from our long WhatsApp calls where we would end up talking at length about TV shows in general, or the ones that we love as well, that we watched when we were kids. So we figured, why not make a podcast?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I know that lots of times we were on the phone for hours at a time, and I realized that a ton of time had passed and all we'd spoken about was a TV show we watched when we were kids. So, and then I would hear all sorts of podcasts about that stuff, and I'd think, hey, we should just do it because that way at least we'll be recording what we're talking about. And it's fun, and we get to rewatch one of our favorite shows, and it brings us together across the miles. So I think that's why a lot of people start doing them, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's it's been a lot of fun so far, even though we only just started. So yeah.
All right, we're so excited to get started with this. So let's talk a little bit about our childhood and our earliest memories of Only Fools and Horses. Why don't you start, dude?
Okay, sure. So my earliest memories of Only Fools and Horses, my goodness, I was really young from what I remember. When I started watching this show, I couldn't tell you what my sort of first episode was, but if I had to guess, I'd probably say it was around season 5. I have vague memories of, weirdly, of Video Nasty, which is not a very appropriate episode, actually, for someone of my age, when I was young to watch. I mean, it's the only episode that sort of talks directly about pornography. But I do remember that, the night nurse thing.
Night nurse, does it.
Take one.
Night nurse, take one.
And I do remember not understanding it, actually, as well, the bra thing and everything. But yeah, so that episode, the one that I remember watching when it came out, because I remember the adverts on television, was Miami Twice. Because I remember there was a promo advert on television with the crocodile in the background. Also the alligator, in the background.
That was a bloody crocodile, Rodney. Oh, I ain't a crocodile. I know a crocodile when I come face to face with one. I've seen enough Tarzan films.
Where they were sitting on the log and there was that that exchange there. So yeah, I think Miami Twice I have very fond memories of, and I remember how much I loved the song, which I'll talk about a bit more later.
Yeah, I was going to say that was 1991 Christmas, so that makes sense because that Christmas you were like 7 and we would all watch that together on the TV, so that does make sense. My first memories would have been maybe Video Nasty or Yuppie Love or The Miracle of Peckham, because I think those are the 3 episodes that we had recorded on VHS off the TV, so they had all the BBC stuff in them, and I remember watching those over and over when we were little kids. Yeah, maybe Chain Gang as well. So what series is Yuppie Love and Chain Gang and everything? Is that series 5?
So Chain Gang and Yuppie Love are series 6.
Oh, they are? Okay, yeah. So that would have been the series. So series 5 and 6 are Miracle of Peckham. I do know that when we were kids, Dad loved Only Fools and Horses, but he used to talk about how there was a different character in it originally, Grandad, and we didn't have any of those episodes and didn't see any of them for the longest time.
Yeah, that's right.
We knew only the Uncle Albert era, and it was only when we were about maybe 12 or 13 that we got our own money and were able to go shopping that we bought the VHS of all the early series so that we could watch the early series.
Yeah, and I think that was mainly out of curiosity, I guess. I mean, I do remember thinking of the Grandad episodes as being quite mysterious to me because, yeah, you're right. Dad said how he didn't particularly like them. But yeah, we'd never recorded any of those off the television because they were broadcast far earlier than we would have been able to record them off the television, I suppose.
Well, some of them were, yeah. You were able to start recording things off TV at some. I'll have to confirm the date, but it's at some point during the broadcast of Only Fools and Horses. It definitely wasn't able to be done in 1981 when it first came out. So. Yeah. And I think it was probably a huge thing. Like, everyone was so excited to be able to do it around the time that like Yuppie Love and stuff came out. So it's got to be like very late 80s that happened. Yeah, we'll have to confirm the date on that. But yeah, I mean, we grew up with a ton of VHS of things recorded off TV. So it was very common for us to have like TV broadcasts of everything. So yeah, my earliest memories was watching those over and over. And again, like you said about Video Nasty, as a little kid, because I mean, I was born in 84, so yeah, I was a little kid as well, and I didn't understand definitely all of the jokes in Only Fools and Horses, and that it wasn't about that. Like, it was about the characters and about the familiarity and the stuff, you know, like I think we talked about how Dad used to call the show Rodney to us because we didn't understand like the title. I didn't think I even knew what the title was for the longest time. I just thought it was called Rodney.
Probably easier than saying Only Fools and Horses to kids, because we wouldn't have understood that, and that would have seemed like a really long title to us back then as well. Yes,
and we'll discuss the title a little bit more later, but it wasn't just kids that didn't understand that title, for sure. But yeah, so what else did I write? No, okay, that's all my notes for the childhood memories. Let's talk about, do we have any favorite characters? Do you have a favorite character?
Yeah, so I think throughout the entire series, it might be very cliche, but Del was always my favorite character. And honestly, I think, and I'm sure Dad will be really happy to hear this, it's probably because he reminded me of Dad. Like something about Del. Obviously, Dad is not really anything like Del in reality, but there was something about Del that really reminded me of Dad. I think it was like his sarcasm and his the way that he would like be able to sort of passively aggressively insult you. No offense, Dad, this is all good things. I picked all this up from you, and I do this as well now, and I love it about myself, so no problem. But yeah, I found like the way that the jokes would be quite entertaining. You know, when Dad would make fun of you, it was in quite an entertaining way, or when he'd make fun of other people, it was in quite an entertaining way. So I think that was why I associated Del with Dad. And then even when Raquel came on the scene, I kind of associated Raquel with Mom. As well, because like some of the arguments that Del and Raquel had, particularly the part where I think it's in Mother Nature's Son, where she's listing all the stuff she's got to do.
Don't you think I've got enough to do? I've got the baby to feed and clean. I've got the old man of the sea there moaning because his egg was running. I've got the beds to make, hoovering to do, washing and ironing to do, and I finish all that just in time to cook dinner. Do it yourself, Trotter.
This sort of interaction really made me think of Mum and Dad. It reminded me of them when I was younger. So yeah, I think that's the reason Del was my favourite character, because I just thought of him like Dad. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
how about you, dude?
In a good way, like that is true for me as well. But I think one of the reasons that Del reminded you of Dad as well is also the fact that he is the carer and the one that is everybody relies on, and the one that takes care of everybody and everything. So yeah, it does make sense. But yeah, a lot of Dad's humor and sarcasm and insulting you as a joke is very similar to Del. I do remember when we were kids, he would be like calling us Wallies and stuff.
You Wally!
And we would laugh. So yeah, I think it's not surprising that Del reminds you of Dad. Yeah, I mean, I think out of the main cast, I agree. I think Del is my favorite character. If we slip into side characters and stuff, overall, my favorite character is Trigger.
That makes sense, of course.
Not just because he's like a source of comedy. It's more to do with his actual character. Like, you see so many amazing examples of Trigger's loyalty to Del. Is so nice. I mean, we'll talk about them as we go through the episodes, but just think about little things like, when I think he gives him his car in the poker game.
Yeah, you're gonna have me car.
Cheers, Trig, you're a real pal.
But also the fact that in Little Problems, he doesn't want to leave the room when the Driscoll brothers come in, even though it's got nothing to do with him. Like, little things like that, it's very subtle. But like, he's just unbelievably loyal to a fault. So I just really like I like the idea of a character. And also, Roger Lloyd Pack did say that he played him to be, not to be stupid, but to feel like everyone else around him just didn't get it. So it wasn't like Trigger felt like everyone was making fun of him. He didn't. He just sort of thought everyone else was silly and he understood the situation. So
I agree with you about Trigger being like a wonderful side character and probably one of the most interesting because, yeah, I would say Trigger to me is almost childlike. Mm-hmm. There's this innocence about him. Like you said, not stupid, but a little naive and sort of full of wonder. Like the statements that he makes, he rarely judges anyone or says anything bad about anyone. He just takes it in and sort of reacts to it very, very neutrally a lot of the time, but in a funny way because of Roger Lloyd Pack's acting and his facial expressions. But yeah, there doesn't seem to be any menace in Trigger.
No.
Like he never seems to want to hurt anyone or make fun of anyone or, like I think of the scene in Danger UXD.
What's all the panic?
I sold Dale some dolls, inflatable dolls. Well, apparently the police are looking for them. They're dangerous. They've been fitted with the wrong gas cylinders. They're full of something called propane. If them things get hot, they are going to have to redo the A to Z.
That's bad news, isn't it?
Terrible. Oh, that's tragic.
Trigger looks at them like, why are you laughing? And it's true. Like Trigger would never laugh at that because that's really horrible and insensitive. So yeah, Trigger is a genuinely just a lovely guy. I agree with you.
Yeah, and then also I guess I would always have a soft spot for the Grandad and Albert characters. Just the I love like the vibe that both of them bring to the show with the the older like viewpoint and the grandparent that knows better and is a source of comedy in lots of ways, but brings like a warmth to the show that you just wouldn't have if they weren't there. So
yeah, I think for the Grandad and the Albert characters, I agree with you. There's a warmth there, and I think I appreciate those two characters a lot more now I'm older than I did when I was younger. I think when I was younger, the during the war stories or some of the moments they actually let Albert sort of tell a story and it was quite meaningful, it just went over my head because I was a kid and I didn't, I couldn't get it. Whereas now I think like the whole part when they go to Tobacco Road in He Ain't Heavy As My Uncle.
During the Blitz, some of the men painted a sign on the roof of a warehouse so that the Luftwaffe pilots could see it. It said, "Dear Adolf, you can break up windows, but not our hearts."
I did not appreciate that dialogue at all when I was a kid. That would have been a part I would have been like, oh, can we skip over this bit? Like, it's really boring. Whereas now, that's like one of my favorite parts of the whole episode.
Yeah.
So.
And that shows interesting how you change your viewpoint as you've become an adult. Like, there's a lot more that I understand now, not just in terms of comedy, but a lot more appreciation for some of the things that we didn't necessarily get. Obviously, when we were kids, our favorite stuff was going to be the physical and the slapstick comedy. And the the insults and stuff. Like, I just remember, I don't think I fully even understood the concept of the story of Yuppie Love with him like lying and stuff. I'm not sure how much I understood. I just liked watching it. I liked the characters. So
well, of course, Yuppie Love also has what's considered to be one of the best moments of Only Fools and Horses.
Yeah,
in it
I mean, if you're talking about slapstick and physical comedy, then it has a moment that everyone voted to be the funniest moment in British TV comedy, right?
I think we're on a winner here, Trig. All right? Play it nice and cool, son. Nice and cool, you know what I mean?
So, I guess, I mean, at this point, maybe that we should mention why we are not going to discuss our favorite episode right now, because obviously talking about all the episodes that we like here and parts that we like. So Jenny and I have both undertaken the grueling task of ranking all 64 episodes in our own personal order of favorites. So as we're going through the episodes each week, we're going to reveal and discuss our rankings, and then we are going to compare them to the very general IMDb rankings.
Right. So one thing to note about IMDb rankings, I guess, is that users do not rank on IMDb as such. The episode rankings are basically generated by IMDb when users rate the episode. So each episode does not necessarily get an equal number of watches and ratings. So it's very general. They just basically rank it on votes of the episode. So this is just for fun. We are not saying that the entire internet ranked the episodes like we did. It's just very general, and it's just for fun. So dude, how did you approach the process of ranking all 64 episodes?
Yeah, it was because I know you did yours first, and you said it was it didn't take that long. Honestly, I think for me, I started off with my favorite episodes, and then I put my least favorite episodes like separately, and then I just kind of all the ones that were left over, I just went back and back and back. And honestly, even, you know, during the process of doing that, I found myself going back and keep changing things like over the time, because it's, like, honestly, with a show like Only Fools and Horses, where you've got so many quality episodes, I find that your tastes, even like from maybe even month to month, when you've just watched an episode that you haven't seen for a while, and you're like, oh my God, that episode's great. Why did I rank it so low? So I think that this is something, like, I can't honestly say by the time that we finish doing all the rankings that I will feel the same way about my ranking as I do now. But that's how I went about doing it. How about you, dude? How did you go about doing it?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the same thing as you. I know I've changed my mind a couple of times. I did rush quickly. I just like, let me just do this and try and do it in that way where you don't overthink it. So I just put them all in a list, and I just went through, and I picked all my favorites, and I picked all my least favorites, and again, then I just filled in the middle, and then I started watching some, and I did make changes as I went along. I think it's really just a case of, it's a very difficult thing to do, and I invite any Only Fools and Horses fan to try to do it, because it's so hard to compare some episodes to others because of the huge, massive difference there is between an episode in series 1, you know, like Christmas crackers, to an episode in series 7. Like, not only are they, you know, very different type of, you know, I mean, there's definitely similarities, but there's so many different types of writing by that point. You know, there's all the side characters to consider. You know, are you talking about plot? Are you talking about your favorite jokes, your favorite moments? Like, it's so difficult. It really is hard.
Yeah.
And again, like, I'm not, like, we talk about this as we go through, but we're not really saying that our low rated episodes are bad, or I'm saying they're low rated, because that makes it sound like they're bad. It's just a case of, you know, we're putting them in our order of favorites, really. Which is your favorite, which is your least favorite, but not necessarily ones you don't like. Now, there are some that we don't love.
I mean, there are a couple that we don't like. I was going to say there are a couple that we don't like, which obviously you'll know when we get to them. But
and everybody has episodes they don't like of every show that they love, you know? An episode you wouldn't choose to put on, and maybe you like a few things about it. And that's why it's fun to do this, because we go through the whole episode and we talk about some of our favorite moments and some of our least favorite moments and jokes and stuff. So it's not just, I hate that episode. It's not that simple.
No.
But I want to discuss a subject actually right now that I think a lot of Only Fools and Horses fans will be very familiar with, and that is the cuts and edits of the show. So the first thing that we should highlight is that we're going to be doing all of our rewatch and recap from the unedited original versions of the episodes. And that includes original music, all the swearing, all the non-PC language that gets cut out a lot, and also with or without the laugh track as it was originally shown on the BBC. So we do both own the DVDs and the VHS as well. So in some cases, we might be more familiar with the heavily edited versions of the episodes. So we'll definitely be able to point out things that we know have been changed from the original, such as music and the odd line here and there getting cut out.
Especially music. Yeah, definitely.
Music number one for sure. But for me, I know the episodes so well that even if there's just a line or something that I've never heard before on the unedited one, I'll be like, that's a line that always gets cut out. Yeah. And obviously cuts are made for all sorts of different reasons, you know, like swearing to do with watersheds when it's being shown, on what channel it's being shown. Like, a lot of people have said that UK Gold cuts out any time that the word shit is said, but it's true that they miss some. I was watching one the other day that, it was the Little Problems, where Danny Driscoll says,
"A shilling a day and an old sandwich."
Oh no, Tony Driscoll says a horse shit sandwich. And that got cut out. And then I was watching the Jolly Boys outing, and the bit where Rodney hits the this is on the UK Gold versions, and when Rodney hits the key and deletes all of his stuff,
shit,
that was still in. Yes. So I was like, that's a much more obvious shit than the horse shit
that's
sandwich.
Weird, isn't it?
So it's not like everybody who watches UK Gold frequently will know it's not consistent. It's like somebody someone's dumb, you know. And also they edit really, really sloppily, like as well. They just cut
Oh,
lines
yeah.
out that make no sense. So again, a famous one that people talk about is when Del does the sniffing thing.
Can you smell that? What is that? Sheep, is it? It's cows? No, I know what it is. It's bullshit.
A lot of the time they leave all of that in and then they just cut out the punchline where it says it's bullshit.
Yeah.
So it makes absolutely no sense that Del's going and sniffing and then it just doesn't have the punchline. So like they don't edit in a way that makes any sense. So
Yeah, agreed.
I hate that. But yeah, as Heather mentioned, one of the major things that gets changed, and this is mostly due to the fact that they didn't get licensing for rebroadcast on DVD and VHS releases, is the music. On the specific topic of music, Heather, did you happen to know that the famous Only Fools and Horses song and Long Live Hooky Street were not used in the original Series 1 airings?
I actually did know that, but I'm not sure why I knew that.
Yeah,
I did know that. I must have read that or seen that in like a documentary or something, maybe.
yeah,
But yeah, it's a weird one. Yeah, I know it, and obviously watching the episodes now, I know because we've got the season 1 broadcast with the original theme song on, which is really strange. It was very jarring when I first started watching those. I was like, what is this weird music that's not the theme song to Only Fools and Horses? But I've gotten used to it now because we've watched all the season 1's episodes. But
yeah. I mean, I'm going to have a little bit more about this in the in my trivia in the episode about how it came onto the BBC and our end of show kind of summary that we're going to do at the end of Series 1. But for now, the original theme music was, in the words of John Sullivan, supposed to be a honky-tonk Chaz and Dave London sound, which was written by the BBC's light entertainment musical director Ronnie Hazelhurst. So the tune that he wrote was actually used for the opening and closing credits for all of the original aired versions of Series 1. So that's when it was aired on the BBC for its first run. So it wasn't after that. After the first run, it was no longer used. So the viewers will probably maybe have never heard it, but you will still be familiar with it, even if you've never seen it aired in that format, because it features in the montage scene of Big Brother, which we'll talk about in the Big Brother episode. So on the subject of music, do you happen to have any favorite songs that you want to talk about, dude?
Oh yeah, well, yeah. I mean, Only Fools and Horses, it has got some wonderful songs in the original broadcasts. Not the one of the worst, the two worst changes, like the songs that they changed for the DVDs, is the Money song, which was originally the Beatles in Mother Nature's Son, and they changed it to this weird like instrumental thing, which is just awful and repetitive. And then the other one that I really hate that they changed because it was so obvious because it was so wonderful in its original broadcast was the Crosby, Stills and Nash Our House.
Is a very, very, very fine house with 2 dogs in
In Time on Our Hands. I was about to say the final episode then. In Time on Our Hands.
Yeah.
And In Time on Our Hands, that original broadcast, because obviously we watched it, you know, when it was originally broadcast, was so meaningful. So yeah, those are the two I hate. But then to talk about the songs that I love, one of the earliest songs that I really love, and I always get nostalgic when I hear it, is Zoom from Diamonds Are for Heather. Can't say I rate the episode that much. Not going to say much more about that. And even though my name is in the title, which is something I liked when I was younger, but I love the Zoom, the song. I don't necessarily even like the montage that it's played over, but I love the song. It's such a great song. And every time I hear the beginning of that song, I always, you know, go back to my childhood. And then the second song that I think is wonderful is the Everybody's Talking at Me.
Everybody's talking at me.
That's in the Jolly Boys outing when they do the montage of them in Margate.
Well, that never gets edited out, right? Has that ever been edited
No,
out?
it doesn't. I'm not talking about these aren't the ones that get changed.
No,
now.
I know. I
This
was
one's
just
always in,
wondering
yeah.
because without that song, that whole montage, which I think is a lot of people's favorite scene and lots of people's like summary of the show. That would be so different without that song, wouldn't it? Can you imagine?
So different. Yeah, that song is perfect for that montage. So I love that song. And another song that I said earlier, because I remember this episode fondly, because I was, I remember watching it when it was broadcast, Miami Twice, was The Summer in the City.
But at night it's a different world. Go out and find a girl. Come on, we're dancing.
I absolutely adored that song, and I just tell you a little story. So before I learned how to download things from YouTube, I remember looking for that song, and I couldn't find it anywhere. It wasn't on in any sort of, I couldn't buy it anywhere, right? So I ended up actually getting in touch with the Gutter Brothers, who are the guys that wrote it. And I sent them an email, and I was like, hey, could I buy the song off you guys? And they wrote back to me. This was about, God, it would have been 14 years ago now this happened. But they wrote back to me, and they wanted to charge me, I remember, like £7.99 for the whole, because they wanted me to buy like the album that it was on. And I was like, at the time I was like, I can't justify paying £7.99.
$7.99.
Yeah, for
That's
one
nothing.
song. This was the only song I wanted. I didn't want anything else. So I ended up obviously now getting it off YouTube, because it's on YouTube, and I just downloaded it from there. But but this song, I absolutely love it, and every time I hear like that intro, and I actually didn't realize it was a cover, obviously, either when I was younger. So I remember when I was on LimeWire. Anyone remember that? When I was about 15, and I was looking for it on LimeWire, and I got all these hits like Summer in the City. I was like, yeah, and I clicked on them, and I got this weird, what I would consider to be the weird version. I was like, what is this? This isn't Summer in the City. And this was the original song that they had done a cover of for Miami Twice. And I was so disappointed, because it doesn't sound anything like it.
I like the
love
original
hard-hitting-
version.
Yeah, see, I don't. I love the hard hitting, like that dun, 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 like the Gutter Brothers version. I absolutely adore that. So that riff alone is enough. But yeah, I just love that version. And I think that's all the songs that I wanted to talk about. Yeah, I think so. But yeah, I mean, in general, every time I hear any song that was on an episode of Only Fools and Horses, I recognize exactly. Oh, sorry, there is one more that is very meaningful, which is the Simply Red, Holding Back the Years.
Holding back the years.
The scene after Rodney gets married.
Right.
I think that's a very meaningful scene. When Dell's standing alone and Rodney's gone off to start his new life. Yeah, that's a really meaningful part. And I think that wouldn't be as impactful without that song.
Yeah. I mean, I think like you said, with the exception of the Time on Our Hands change that gets a lot of people kind of riled up, most of the most meaningful songs we've been lucky that they had the licensing to keep them in. Because,
true.
the ones that are in the most emotional moments or the most memorable moments have remained, but apart from Time in Our Hands. But yeah, like I said, you can't imagine Jolly Boy's Outing without the original music. And imagine if they just tried to change the song in Rodney's wedding scene. It just wouldn't have been the same, would
because
it?
This is the other problem when you change the songs, is there's something weird about the audio. Like, it sounds like it's not supposed to be. A perfect example of this, when they go to the nightclub in Miami Twice, and they've changed the Amy Grant Baby Baby song to this like generic clubby song, and the audio sounds like it's been dubbed over the top. There's no nightclub atmosphere sound with it. So they didn't bother to mix the sound well.
Right.
So you can really tell that music is not meant to be there.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I said. I mean, most of the edits and stuff are actually insanely sloppy. I mean, I know they're working with old audio, I guess, and maybe they can't do it well, but
it might have been difficult, because it sounds to me like the Amy Grant song was actually being played in the bar, in the scene, in the club. It sounds to me like it was, unless it was just very well mixed. I mean, that could be another option, but it does sound like it was.
I don't think it was probably very well mixed. I think you're right. I mean, we'll talk about this when we get to Miami Twice, but the Miami Twice cuts and stuff are some of the worst I've ever seen. I was watching it on BritBox the other day, and it was so bad that they actually repeated a line in the background. Like, you could hear the line again being repeated. There's a like you said, we'll talk about it in Miami Twice, but yeah, you're right. The one that really bugs me is when they're covering up because they used a Status Quo song, I believe, at the beginning originally, and then they couldn't use it again. Oh, you mean on the plane?
on the plane,
Yeah.
and then when Del takes off his headphones, because originally you used to hear the Status Quo song, there's this really weird hee
Yeah, and he's not
like,
laughing.
added in that David Jason didn't even do, which is just like, who the fuck edited
Yeah.
this? Like, it's so bad.
I mean, actually, when we get to Miami Twice, I will watch the edit again just to pull it apart. But I hated watching the edited version. I want to watch the original because the original version is so good, and like the editing on it and the music and everything flows just fine, and there's no weird, strange voiceover parts. But yeah, with the laugh track, it wasn't on the original second part when it was aired, so you can actually hear all the audio, and if you watch the one with the laugh track, it's so bad, so
you can't hear. Yeah, you're
Can't
right. A
hear
lot
any
of the actual
audio.
dialogue
Yeah.
you can't hear. One of the one more thing on this, like one of the things I'm really glad they never released a version of To Hull and Back with a laugh track.
Oh yeah, me too.
Which I'm so glad, because I love To Hull and Back. It's a great episode. So yeah, and obviously that episode as well would not, like Miami Twice, in my opinion, doesn't work with a laugh track. It wouldn't work with a laugh track because the subject matter is quite serious.
Yeah.
And in Miami Twice, the subject matter is pretty serious too. You know, trying to kill Del, it's quite serious actually. So yeah, I think laugh tracks just don't suit these episodes, and it's a shame they decided to put one on for Miami Twice.
Well, yeah, I do wonder honestly how much of like us saying it doesn't suit it is that you tend to prefer an episode in its original aired format. Like if you watch any of the others without a laugh track, you'd be like, oh, this feels eerie and quiet. But then you watch one that hadn't got one on originally and it has it forced in. And then you're like, oh, I hate the laugh track. So I think that's the real reason. Because I have the same issue with other shows like Red Dwarf. They did it. Like they tried to have an episode without a laugh track and it just felt very strange. And then they, with Only Fools and Horses, they seem to have gone back and forth. And I wonder if they record a laugh track from a broadcast or something. Because it just feels very off. Because you'll be so used to your original format that you watch. So that might be one of the reasons. But I think you're right. Like it's a serious subject matter. I still think you could have gotten away with it, but only if we had it from the beginning and not as a over track.
Yeah, I completely agree. And so there is one more episode that I guess I should talk about cuts, because this is probably the most butchered episode, but for different reasons, right? Which is a royal flush. And it's because John Sullivan did not like the original edit because of the way that Del was presented. So now the edited version of a royal flush is heavily cut. Like the whole part that I remember when I was a kid, which was Del whistling along to the opera, that's all completely gone.
I love this one.
Yeah, it's
From
like
the cut that's on the DVD.
It's like half an hour or something, right? Instead of 45
it's
minutes or
crazy.
something. Yeah. I remember noting that when I was a kid and we bought, was it the VHS or the DVD? I think it was the DVD. And we were like, oh, what's wrong? This episode's like so much shorter than it was in our other version.
Yeah, and again, the scene that I remember the most, I think that's like quite an iconic scene in that episode, depending on how you feel about it, who cares? But that scene is iconic, that when Del's in the opera and he's making all the noise and, you know, with Junie. So yeah, I think it was a very strange decision to cut it. Of course, I know why they cut it, but at the same time, yeah, it's kind of one of the things that you remember from the episode. So
yeah, and I think, you know, we're going to come at it from the point of view where we're covering the entire unedited version, so that way at least we're discussing everything and then why it may or may have not been cut. So that I find that more interesting. And because in our heads we are mostly familiar with the uncut versions, we're in a pretty good position to do this. So I think it'd be fun.
So Jenny, I know that you've done quite a lot more research than I have on the origins of how the show made it onto the BBC. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. Let's do that. So just for our podcast, I'm going to be doing most of the research and trivia, and Heather's going to be doing all the editing, because I don't know how to edit, and I
hate researching.
And Heather hates research, and I have more time for research. She has more time for editing. So let's see how it goes. So before I start, I should mention that most of the information that I've gathered is from books. I have used numerous different sources, but mostly books. I've watched a few documentaries, a few websites. I find that the documentaries tend to all say the same thing over and over. I've watched most of them, but they mostly have the same information. So that's probably going to be stuff that fans of the show know the most. And I know there are super fans. I know there's a fan club. I know there are conventions. So there's no way that I am going to get all the information, and I'm probably not going to get everything right. So I'm just letting you know in advance. It's not going to be perfect, because nobody's perfect. So for today's episode, most of this story will come from the book The Official Inside Story of Only Fools and Horses by Steve Clark. So to start, we have to start with the man himself, John Sullivan. So back in 1977, John Sullivan had just become a writer on a BBC contract with a hit series, Citizen Smith. The show ran for 4 series before Sullivan and the lead actor, who happened to be Robert Lindsay, decided that they'd taken the character as far as he could go. He had an idea for another sitcom about a football manager called Over the Moon, which was originally titled You'll Never Walk Alone, for which he had made a successful pilot episode, and the BBC had already commissioned a series. Just when Sullivan was busy writing the 4th episode, the BBC cancelled it. Apparently they were working on another sport TV themed show at the time, and they did not want more than one. In an ironic twist, that new show starred Robert Lindsay. At this
Who's
point,
Robert Lindsay?
You would know him. Look him up. You would recognize his face.
Can you tell me who he is now?
Oh, he was in a show that we watched sometimes at Nan and Grandad's, which I can't remember the name of, but I would be able to Google it. So yeah, John Sullivan was actually feeling very successful and happy at this point. He was writing the show and he was like, everything's good. I think he just bought a house and, you know, and then the show, they were just like, sorry, can't have 2 sport TV themed shows. So pretty much shit. So one good thing that came from this setback was that during the production of Citizen Smith, Sullivan met Ray Butt, a producer and a director who'd worked for the BBC since 1955. And he and Sullivan had a very similar working class background. They got along very well. Fortunately, this friendship blossomed and Sullivan would often socialize with Ray Butt, bouncing ideas off him for new shows. Now, this is critical. Without the support and enthusiasm of Ray Butt, Only Fools and Horses would likely have never seen the light of day. Sullivan had even pitched the idea to the BBC before in the past, and they did not really like it. Ray Butt, however, loved it. They had lengthy discussions about how there was nothing on the TV about the modern, vibrant, multiracial, new slang London, where lots of working class guys had suits and a bit of dosh in their pockets. They both particularly liked the fly pitchers in the market, both having market backgrounds themselves. They had both experienced this type of trading firsthand. So, Butt encouraged Sullivan to go away and write it. And Sullivan did just that. So, dude, do you happen to know which character Sullivan felt was most like himself?
Well, I guess Del, if you had to make a guess, because Del's the lead character. I don't know. I don't think he was like Rodney, was he? You wouldn't write yourself like that.
Actually, it was Rodney. Yeah, so let me tell you.
No.
So the character of Del was actually based on a guy Sullivan knew called Chicky Stoker. He described him as a working class Londoner and a tough man, but always dressed very neatly. He was genuine and liked his attitude to life. He was very loyal to his family, and he tried to instill that into Del. Other influences in Del's character came from people Sullivan just knew in the car trade, such as keeping face during tough times, buying drinks for everyone around the pub, wearing lots of jewelry. Sullivan actually wanted the main character to have a much younger sibling, having a sister himself that was 13 years his senior. The character of Rodney was born. Sullivan said, "Rodney reminded me of myself when I was young. I was a dreamer and an idealist, just like Rodders."
Aww.
So finally, we have Grandad. Sullivan said the character of Grandad gave the situation the voice of an old man who had seen all life. He witnessed the end of the First World War, lived through the Second, and now couldn't really give a monkeys about the world.
That's interesting.
So, Del Boy was a man in the middle with enough experience of life to know the pitfalls, but still young enough to have a dream and be ambitious. Rodney was the naive young lad at the beginning of the road who was very, very green. So with the 3 ages, you had a balance. That's a quote directly from John Sullivan. So another interesting thing here is that Sullivan introduced the idea that their mother had passed away when Rodney was young as a way to bond the 2 brothers. He observed that in Cockney and Irish working class worlds, the mother figure was incredibly important and would be normal to grieve for many years and idealize the memory of the mother. So you can definitely see that. And so a few weeks later, Sullivan gave his script to Butt, and Butt was impressed. At the time, the working title of the show was Reddies. He went ahead and sent it to the BBC head of comedy, John Howard Davis, who said he quite liked the script, but he sent a memo saying he didn't think it was an opener. And that was the script for Big Brother. So Sullivan kept that memo on his wall until the day he left the BBC. He thought it was hilarious that the episode that had been the opener to the show that ended up being so successful. So this is just me, my thought now, not a direct quote from Sullivan, but it goes to show, doesn't it, that there is no authority on what makes a good script or a good show. So the head of the BBC said that that wasn't an opener, and it ended up being one of their most successful shows of all time. So
yeah, it's true. I mean, art is subjective. I always say this when I lose all the competitions that I enter for my songs and my plays. I'm like, yeah, they just, art's subjective, guys. That's why we don't win, because, it's great what we're doing, but they just don't see it.
Right. Yeah. And John Sullivan is such an amazing underdog story, and he has a lot of things written about him. But if you read any of his history, you will see he plugged away for years. He wrote script after script after script, and things got rejected. He tried so many different angles, and he got rejected a lot in the early part of his career. And it's just normal. It is normal for this to happen.
And honestly, just saying, because I'm, in a similar position, I write scripts and I sell them, and I write songs and I sell them. And I think you have to be very strong, and I'm still wondering if I am actually at this point in my life, but to get constantly rejected, it's very tough. I mean, I wanted to be an actor at one point, and I gave that up because I couldn't take the constant rejection it would have needed for me to get maybe a part in the future, or maybe never get a part. That's the thing. Obviously there's success stories like John Sullivan, but he easily could have not been a success story, and then this trying and everything that he did, very much like Del, would never have come to fruition, and we wouldn't know who John Sullivan was, and we wouldn't have Only Fools and Horses. Obviously, it's nice to hear these stories, but to be fair, the majority of people don't ever get anywhere, even though they keep doing and keep trying. And
if Only Fools and Horses hadn't been picked up at this point, would we have heard of him? I mean, he had a successful show before Only Fools and Horses, but in our generation, we would never have watched that show. So true. If he maybe at this point, he might have been like, I'm going to give up. But actually, because of that show that he was writing that got cancelled, the Over the Moon, he was already on a contract with the BBC. So that also helped, because they already had employed him, which means it helped with this getting the Only Fools and Horses. So thanks to pressure from Ray Butt, Sullivan was actually then commissioned to write the entire series, although there were no guarantees that it would actually go into production. But because they were paying him anyway, they went ahead and said, go ahead. And the BBC also had a scheduling gap because of his other cancellation. So you could say he got lucky. One thing I thought is interesting here that we should note is that the entire of Series 1, all the scripts were written before anything was filmed or before the actors were cast. So this might explain a little bit more about some of the things that we say about these episodes and the writing. I mean, that actually doesn't include Christmas Crackers.
Yeah.
But the entire of episodes Big Brother all the way through The Russians Are Coming were written before he had ever seen the faces of David Jason, Nick Lyndhurst, or Leonard Pierce. So I find that pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I write scripts for schools, so a lot of the times I know who I'm writing the script for or who I'm writing the character for. Like usually, I've got an idea of which student is going to play which part as I'm writing the script. And that really helps.
It does help, yeah.
When I'm writing a script, because, I can be like, okay, I know the capabilities of this student, so I can write this comedic bit here, and I can, or I can write this action bit here because the student, can do stage fighting. It must be very difficult to write a character like Del. Del is unique in so many ways, and he's got this bravado, and even not even be able to sort of picture how he looks. I mean, I'd imagine Sullivan did picture how he looked and sounded while he was writing the character, but it might have ended up that David Jason was not anything like what he pictured. So it's really it's really fascinating to me that he was able to craft such characters without having any clue about who was going to be cast playing them.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we also mentioned, like, later on that we, you can't compare the writing in something like The Russians Are Coming to something like If They Could See Us Now. So can you imagine the different style of writing that Sullivan had to employ to write a show before he even knew who the characters were going to be played by? And then later you're writing for a character that is known and loved by the entire of the UK. So it's not the same style of writing, but
no,
this is
not at all.
This is back when it was in its very early days. So do you happen to remember the TV show Minder?
Oh, yeah. I remember Minder. I don't remember anything about it really, but I remember we used to watch it. Yes.
Yeah, so Minder was on the ITV, and Sullivan thought that if Minder hadn't been made, the BBC may not have picked up Only Fools and Horses, because he feels that the show Minder opened the door to shows about modern London, and it helped the BBC see the potential in the idea. Because a lot of the shows that were on TV back then were all like very kind of posh TV, upper class, like depictions of England, and not as
like
much
Keeping Up Appearances.
I don't know if that was on, but I'm thinking more about
that was after, wasn't it? But yeah, I know what you mean. Like
things about like
British.
Royalty and like people living in stately homes and stuff. Like this was a modern, gritty, realistic thing. And he thought that if Minder wasn't so successful on the ITV, there's probably quite a lot of competition as well between BBC and ITV. And BBC were like, oh, this show worked on ITV. So Sullivan went ahead, wrote the whole of Series 1, and within 2 weeks, the show was given the green light to go into production.
Wow. So someone read the script that liked it then and decided it was worth it, which is good. They're lucky, very lucky. I mean,
yeah, this whole thing seems like a fortunate, like just the way it sort of fell into place. There was a lot of things that could have derailed this. So we're very lucky we got it. Do you happen to know which of the three main characters, which was the biggest headache to cast?
Well, I know that the actor of Roy Slater was considered for Dell. I think that's pretty common knowledge. So I'm going to guess probably Dell.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about Grandad, but yeah, I mean, just naturally Dell I would think would be the most difficult one to cast of the three. I mean, Nick Lyndhurst does look like a big kid. So, and I know he was very young, but again, I think I saw in one of the documentaries that he did a really good audition. So yeah, I'm going to say Dell.
Yes, you're correct. It's Dell. And the decision to cast Nick Lyndhurst was automatically decided by the BBC based on another show that he was in. Sullivan had no argument. He'd seen him in a show called Butterflies, and he was the only concern he had was whether he could do a Cockney accent. But as soon as he saw that he could, he was happy with the casting decision. So Nick Lyndhurst, it was no big deal. He was cast immediately.
A no-brainer.
Yeah, Leonard Pierce was another easy casting. Ray Butt called a few agents, and they only auditioned 2 or 3 actors. And once they heard that lovely old growly voice of his, Sullivan said to Ray Butt, "That's him." So casting Dell was a huge headache. And so, yeah, you do know already some of the other actors. First choice, actually, was an actor called N. Reitel. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. He actually looks a lot more like a Nick Lyndhurst. And he probably would have done a good job at the part. He's a good actor, but...
oh, yeah. I mean, if we'd never had David Jason, we wouldn't know, right? That David Jason is Dell, but he wouldn't have been Dell. So, yeah, exactly. Someone else would have taken it and done the same.
BBC wanted him because he looked like Nick Lyndhurst, but he was busy. He had other obligations, so they immediately moved on to their next choice, which was Jim Broadbent.
That's the Roy Slater actor, yeah.
Correct. Who's very successful now in other stuff. Jim actually turned down the part because he was starring in a play that got transferred to the West End. That was kind of it. They considered a few other people, but they got down to 2 weeks before filming and they still had not cast Dell. They'd even cast Trigger because while they were searching to cast Dell, Butt saw Roger Lloyd Pack in a West End production of the play Moving and thought he would be perfect for Trigger. And they actually almost lost Nick Lyndhurst and Leonard Pierce because it got so close to the wire and they still didn't have a Dell. So once again, Ray Butt saves the day. He was watching Open All Hours and he saw David Jason playing his role of Granville opposite Ronnie Barker. So he pitched the idea to Sullivan and funnily enough, Sullivan was not that keen.
Yes, I think I've heard this before. Yeah, that he wasn't sold on David Jason, which is amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I think it's so he couldn't see him in the role. This is the problem. So David Jason said John had it very fixed in his mind of what sort of character Del Boy was, and he didn't think I could play that. Now I don't know if you've ever watched Open All Hours, but yeah, the character of Granville, he's not Del at all. David Jason was more of a character actor and apparently could have even played Grandad. He was more of a, like a not specifically, he didn't represent what John Sullivan thought Del Boy would be at the time.
Well, that's interesting because, sorry, just to interrupt you slightly, talking about what I was saying earlier about the script. Yeah, so John Sullivan wrote the script. He probably was picturing somebody, he didn't know who, but he was picturing somebody saying being Del and playing Del's character in a certain way. And it's really difficult when you write a script because you tend to write the lines to be said in a specific way with a specific tone. And it's difficult if an actor takes it and they say it in a completely different way. You can get quite precious about that. So that makes sense. That makes sense that he had another thought of what Del would be.
Yeah. And interestingly, the way they did it in this day, he hadn't seen him or anything. He hadn't auditioned. At this point, it was just, do you think that person can play this part? So the head of light entertainment at the BBC and the other BBC executives were also opposed to David Jason. But mostly because he didn't look anything like Nick Lyndhurst, and they were like, he's supposed to be his brother. But they were also afraid of damaging their relationship with Ronnie Barker because they thought if they took Jason away from Open All Hours, they might damage their relationship with one of the most successful comedians on the BBC. But Ronnie Barker was delighted when he saw David Jason as his protege. So
that's great.
So one thing that Sullivan had actually fought for was the idea that Del and Rodney should look really different. He wanted to emphasize the point that Del and Rodney were the only ones who actually thought they were brothers, and most people would assume they were from different fathers. So that was important to Sullivan. So at least David Jason had that on his side. So David Jason was actually asked to audition, and he was brought in to read with Lyndhurst and Pierce. So Sullivan and Buck then, when they saw the three of them together...
their chemistry is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what it really was. Yeah, they were delighted. They let them know on the spot. They were like, we're going to go with you three. So they all went off to have a drink, and the show went into production a few weeks later.
I love it. So British.
Yeah.
Let's go down the pub. We got the part. Woo.
And the end of the story was everyone went for a drink.
It's like how most British stories end, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
And wait for all this to blow over.
So one last little bit of trivia is, do you know how the show got its name or what Only Fools and Horses means?
Okay, so Only Fools and Horses is it's about like it's about working, right? So horses work and fools work, like that's what it is, right? Part of that side, part of that quote, Only Fools and Horses work. I mean, it's in the theme song, but that's the meaning. It's like only fools work as like part of the system, and Del is like a market trader and he's not part of the system. At least that's what I think it is, right?
Yeah, so it means like you've got to be kind of stupid or a horse to actually work, right? Like
like a
smart
9 to 5
people,
kind of job.
The money just comes to them, right? But so the show was accepted under the name Reddy's, but Sullivan always knew that was just a working title. He didn't like it. He wanted something longer, and he knew of the phrase "Only Fools and Horses work." And actually, his show Citizen Smith, Series 2, Episode 2, is called Only Fools and Horses, which I'm sure a lot of people don't know. Sullivan liked the idea as a show name. You can tell it was his idea. He wanted it because Del's main aim in life is to not work. But he ends up scurrying around and constantly busting his ass not to work. But the whole concept of Del's character really does come from that name. So Jimmy Gilbert, the head of Light Entertainment, asked what it meant, and he was told it was a London saying, but it actually turns out it's not. It's an American saying from vaudeville theatre days, and it came to Britain through music halls. But not that it matters. A poll was done at the BBC, and it turned out nobody knew the origin of the saying, so we don't even know it right now. Another title that was considered was Big Brother, but people were worried it would be associated with George Orwell's book 1984.
Yeah, it absolutely would have been, yes.
Which the show is absolutely nothing like, so...
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So the reason that Only Fools and Horses ended up getting accepted by the BBC as a title is because John Sullivan, under the advice of the future show producer Gareth Gwenlyn, told the BBC, he was given this advice by Gareth Gwenlyn to tell the BBC that he had no other ideas, but let's hear what you've got. And the BBC didn't have any other ideas, so he got his title. It's kind of funny.
That's exactly what I do. That's what I do in my classes when I want people to agree with me and they're like criticizing my script, or they're like, oh, I don't think this bit works. I'm like, oh, please let me hear your other alternative suggestion.
Right.
And then there's nothing. I'm like, okay, then so we'll keep it the same way then. So yeah, I agree that is a good way to get your way if you know the people that are criticizing you don't have a better suggestion. Yes.
Yeah. Let's see what you got. All right.
Exactly.
And that's
So
it.
anyway, yeah. Well, okay. So let's finish our introduction episode with something fun. Okay. So we've actually devised some quiz questions here. I've got some for Jenny and she's got some for me. So people who are listening, I'm curious to see if you guys know the answers to these too. So you can test yourself as well while you're listening along. Do you want to go first or shall I?
You didn't do the quote.
Yes. All right. Do you want to go first or shall I? Why don't we both go together? Yeah! There you go. So, yeah, do you want to do yours? Do you want to do a question, then I'll do a question? Let's mix it up.
No,
like
because
that.
mine has to be done quick fire.
Okay, then why don't you do yours first, then I'll do mine.
Okay, so mine should be quite quick. I have done a name the episode in which the Dell's business venture or this product appears.
Oh my God. Okay, this might be quite hard.
No, it won't be as hard as you think. Okay.
Okay.
Trotters crash turbans.
Modern men.
Trotters pre-blessed wine.
That is, sorry, Miami first part. Miami twice, the first part.
Correct. Trotter watch.
That is Slow Buster Chingford, season 1.
Peckham Spring.
Peckham Spring is Mother Nature's son.
Lowry doors.
That's really funny because you just lagged and I didn't hear the whole thing, but I heard doors, so I'm guessing as one door closes.
The Trotters International Star Agency.
Oh God, hang on, this one. Let me think. Trotters International Star. Oh, of course. Stage fright.
125 Latvian radio alarm clocks that go off whenever they bloody well like.
Okay, now that is one of the later episodes because I know the scene where they go off and Raquel goes, "Oh my God," and then they all go off after she's left. But what episode? Oh geez, that's funny. I think it's one of the last 3. Is it Heroes and Villains?
Yes, it's Heroes and Villains, correct.
Yes, get in.
Okay, just 2 more. The Inframax Deep Penetration Massager.
Okay, well, that's the one where Albert has to do it in the market because Rodney's not free. So Rodney's doing baby making. No? Oh, no.
Oh, I shouldn't have shook my head. I ruined it.
Yeah, you shook your head. I can see you, remember, on the screen.
I thought you said you weren't looking at me.
Yeah, well, no, you were next to my script. Okay, hang on. Let me think. The infrared. I'll get it. Hang on. Oh, no. Have I got to say it quickly? Have I got to answer quickly? I'm trying to think what's around it. That's why. I obviously I know the scene in the market with Albert when he comes in. Why can't Rodney do it? Oh, Rodney's working for Cassandra's dad now. I think, if that's what it is. So it should be a season 6 episode. I'm gonna go with no, it's not that one. It's not Little Problems because that's the mobile phone episode. Oh fuck. Is it season 6? Am I right there?
I think I have to cut
Can
you
you
off.
tell me that? Oh, okay then. Go on.
You were on the wrong track, so you're never going to get it. It's actually the Frog's Legacy because he's working for Mr. Jahan, so it is not after Cassandra.
Yes,
yeah.
I knew there was a reason Rodney wasn't there, but I couldn't remember what the reason was. Okay, I got that one wrong.
That's funny. I didn't think you that one would be one that tripped you up, but I guess sometimes it is hard to figure it out. Last one.
It's an isolated scene. That's why I couldn't think of it because there's not really any other parts in the episode where they talk about the massager. It's mainly just that bit.
Yes, he does say in the pub about healing hands trotter.
Now I remember it.
And cures me in front of all the punters. Yeah, okay.
That's right. Yeah.
Last one was fresh Jersey tomatoes.
Danger UXD.
Yeah.
Of course.
And that's it.
How about a slice of bread? Okay, all right. So my quiz is a little bit. How did I do? How many did I get?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I only had 9 questions, so you got 8 out of 9.
So I got 8 out of 9. Okay, not bad. Oh, I'm annoyed at myself I didn't get that.
It's okay. I mean, I'm glad I got one that tripped you up because I was worried it'd be too easy, especially with me saying them as they're said in the episode.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, I'll try and do that for your quote ones as well to make it fair. So mine are quite varied in difficulty, I guess. I'm not sure. I have no idea actually how you'll do with these. So, question 1. I have 11 questions, by the way.
Oh.
In which? No, I'm sure everyone's loving the quiz at home. Okay. In which episode do we see all of the interior of the Trotter flat?
There's only one
Start with the easy
episode.
one. Yeah.
Oh, is it Mother Nature's son?
How do you not get this? all of the interior. So the part that usually all of the interior, meaning like the wall that we don't usually see where the audience is sitting.
Yeah, so I guess that's a wording thing because you mean to Holland back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is actually
to Holland back.
Yeah, because they didn't actually have a wall normally because it's filmed on
it's
set.
just for that one episode.
That one wasn't. Yeah, I thought you meant like all the rooms, like the inside.
Oh, I'm sorry. No,
flat,
that's my bad. Yeah. Oh, wow. I ruined the first question already. Okay,
No,
so
it's fine.
hopefully this one is better worded. Okay, again, should be an easy one. Finish the quote from a season 2 episode. Any quote. No, I'm joking. Okay, so here's the quote. And again, if you don't get this, you're a terrible fan. I knew you was cheating, Boise. Oh, yeah. Ow.
Because that wasn't the hand I dealt you.
No, actually, because that wasn't the hand that I dealt you. Oh, you got hand wrong. Sorry.
No, that's
yes,
not
that's
fair.
correct. That's correct. But in the quotes, you've got to do it in Dell's accent. Okay, so very good. Question 3. In which episode is... I actually won't say the season. In which episode is Monopoly played and which properties are mentioned?
Okay, well, it's definitely Friday the 14th that they play Monopoly.
Correct.
They mention Piccadilly and the smelly old waterworks.
Yeah.
And what does Dell say that Grandad's got? The waterworks. Is there another one or are there 2?
There are 2 more that are mentioned.
Okay.
You got Piccadilly and the waterworks.
Yeah.
Do you want a hint?
Yeah.
What
colour?
property does Rodney land on in the beginning of the scene?
Oh, yeah. What did he land on? And Dell has it, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Park Lane.
Correct.
Ah!
And then there's one more that I don't know if you'll get because even I, when I was thinking this, didn't get it.
Yeah, I don't think I
it's
can
when
get it.
Dell is describing what properties Rodney has when he says you own everything on the board, and he's describing what Rodney owns and what Grandad owns. He says Grandad has the waterworks and all that, and he says you've got Coventry Street.
I never would have got that. Yeah.
Yeah. So Coventry Street was the 4th one, but that was a hard one. So well done, dude. You got.
I
3
got
out of
most
4.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you got most of it. Okay. Question 4. In which 3 locations do the Trotters attempt to catch a butterfly, and what action did they try?
Okay. Well, I know there is a roof.
Yeah.
Where
Who's
Dell
on
is
the roof? Yeah,
Dell is on the
Dell
roof, so he goes along the edge and he jumps off to try to catch it.
Yeah.
And I
He
know
falls
that,
off, yeah.
he falls off the roof. And I remember the lake. The Rodney goes into the lake,
Yep,
and that's
the
where he
pond.
actually. So he catches it in his hand, and I
There's
can't.
one more.
I
The
can't
first
remember.
one. The first one is the one you're missing.
I don't remember.
Where are they when they see
In the
butterfly?
graveyard.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what do they try and do in the graveyard to catch it? Do you remember?
I don't know. Do they just sneak up?
Albert. Finish the quote. Albert.
I
gives you a-
don't know. Oh, his hat. Yeah. Okay,
yes.
yeah.
Gives you hat. Yeah, there you go. And then he tries to throw the hat over the butterfly.
Okay.
Yes. So those are the 3 answers. Good job, dude. Not bad. Okay. Question 5. Which episode in season 5 features the line? This one's a little bit hard. Bit older than me, but I've been brought up to respect my elders. And who says it?
It is Rodney says it, and it's the Miracle
Correct.
of Peckham.
Very good. Can you tell me what the next line is?
No. But I know, like I told you in my earlier part, Miracle of Peckham was one I watched a lot. I don't remember the next line, but
So do you know who he's talking about? What the scene
he's
is
talking about the Helen of Croydon that he met down the pub the night before.
Yeah.
But I don't remember. Is the next line Albert? Because he's talking to Albert. Yeah.
Yes, the next line is Albert.
I don't know what he says though.
Was it a trumpet?
Oh, okay.
No, I don't remember having a bloody trumpet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the next line. Good job, dude. Really good. I didn't think you get that one. That one's quite hard, I think, because it's quite a random line. Okay, in the season 6 episode, Danger UXD, how many other customers are there in the takeaway before Denzel runs out?
Oh, that's really hard.
Yes, it is. That's quite a hard one.
I don't know. I'm going to have to guess. 4.
Good guess. Incorrect. It's 2.
Oh.
Just 2. There's one standing next to him and there's one standing behind him. That's it.
Damn it.
Yes.
There's
Yes,
no way I would
not
know
something
that.
I expected you to know. Yeah, this is a difficult one. So these ones are quite hard coming up now. Okay. In one episode, there is a male midwife. What is the episode? That's the easy part. And what is the name of the male midwife?
Well, it's definitely 3 men, a woman, and a baby.
Correct.
I don't remember the guy's name. I just because
it's mentioned once by one of the other female nurses in the room. That's all. So,
and they call him Doctor something.
No, they call him Mr. Whatever
Mr.
his name is.
I don't know. I just keep thinking John because Adele calls him John.
Yes, because Adele remembers. Okay, so the answer is Mr. McCallum.
Oh, I never would have got that.
Yeah. It's a hard one, like I said. It's one line. Okay, question 8. These are hard, so it's fine. Okay, this one you might get. How many men in suits are standing behind Rico, Del, and Rodney on the beach in the episode Miami Twice?
Oh, does that include... Oh, no, Rico's on the lounger. Okay, 4.
So my wording is men in suits are standing behind Rico, Del, and Rodney.
Is it 4? 3. 5.
5. It's 5. So there's the 4 other like mafia boss people and Salvatore. So originally when I was writing this question, I was like, I put bodyguards and I was like, oh, but Salvatore's not a bodyguard. So I have to change the wording to men in suits. Otherwise you would,
I thought it was a trick question because one of them wasn't wearing a full suit.
Yes. No, they're all wearing suits. They're all wearing full suits. But 4 of them bodyguard suits. Okay, good. All right. Next question. Let's see if you get this one. This could be difficult. Which episode ends with the following quote? This time next year, we will be millionaires.
Is it Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
No.
Oh, it's The Frog's Legacy.
Very good. Yeah, now that's a trick question because obviously Time on Our Hands ends with this time next year, we'll be millionaires. And The Frog's Legacy ends with this time next year, we will be millionaires.
No, the Time on Our Hands ends with we could be billionaires.
Oh, sorry. Yes, you're right. Sorry. Yes,
but I was thinking, I know that Del says it with a sad inflection.
So that's why I didn't say this in Del's voice because I think you would have got it too easily.
Yes, and now I know Who Wants to Be a Millionaire ends with him singing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, good job, dude. Yeah, that's a tough one. Okay. What does the acronym SWANS stand for?
Oh my goodness. God, there's something water and natural spring committee. Is it something water and natural springs? Is it Sussex?
Yes. So it's only the first word that you're missing.
Yeah, and is that a location? S?
No, it's not. It's Spa Water and Natural Springs Committee. Yeah, really good, dude. I would not have gotten that. I thought of this question earlier and I had to go and watch the bit in the episode to get it right. So no, you did really well there. Okay, the last question, question 11. And this is a nice one. I think you'll get this easily. What is the last line we ever hear Mike say?
Oh, it's on the ass still.
Yes, it is. I thought that was a really nice way to end the quiz. So well done, dude. You did really well. Some of these questions were really hard. Even though I thought of the questions, I had to go back and watch the episode to get the answer. So
I know. I mean,
I didn't know them either.
I did the same thing. I actually couldn't think of enough different business names. So I ended up starting to watch some because I was thinking, am I forgetting some names that he gives? But that's why I just went to products eventually. So,
no. I think yours was a good idea. Yeah, for
it takes a long time.
Everyone, yeah, absolutely. I hope everyone enjoyed our quizzes, and I hope you found some of the questions challenging if you were trying to answer at home. Feel free to steal any of these if you're running a pub quiz in the UK anytime soon. Okay, so drink up, we're leaving.
Okay, so that's it for this introduction episode. We hope you'll join us next week when we will kick this off with the very first episode of Series 1, Big Brother. Until then...
Au revoir, listeners. If you like what you hear and want to contact us, you can email us at longlivehookeystreetpodcast@gmail.com. All one word, no spaces. Bonjour.